Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle. Proud to be part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name's Iain Mackay. I am a rather unexpected host for tonight, or maybe I'm not. Maybe it's usually my solo pod. What is unexpected is I'm not doing this on my own. I'm joined tonight by Michael Grahamslaw. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. I've got a surprise Wednesday away, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to come on and join you.
Which is very good, because I might have been twiddling my thumbs sitting here on my own, but actually there is quite a lot for us to get through. Certainly in part one, where we're going to talk about incoming players. Now, I think it just has to be noted, because we're slightly behind the curve here, although I know they mentioned it last night. Malik Chow, centre-back reinforcement, has been announced officially as having signed, and I've even heard his introductory interview where he confirms that not only did he watch goal as a 9-year-old, but he has regularly watched goal ever since then as well. So I thought that was a nice touch to even know about that. I mean, obviously, How's been interested in him for a couple of years. He's obviously been interested in Newcastle for a couple of years as well. So a match made in heaven. What are your feelings about him?
Yeah, I feel like it's the 7th or 8th player who has said, oh, I really like Newcastle because of goal. The producer of that film, he should be getting royalties just for every signing that we make, because he's done a fantastic job. Santiago Munez is going to go down in history at Newcastle more as an agent than he ever did as a make-believe player. But yeah, I think on a serious note, Malik Chow is a great signing. I think he's an absolute beast physically. I think the one thing that our back line was missing is pace, and this guy has it in abundance. And I think he's one of those as well, that he's not just like a Diego Carlos that went to Aston Villa, where he's built, he's pacey, but he's an absolute lunatic. Malik Chow actually has a bit of a brain on him and looks like a smart defender. So him and Botman alongside each other for a full season, that gets me very excited.
Well, I do vaguely remember him playing against Newcastle in the goalless draw against Milan 2 years ago in the Champions League. What I like when I'm looking at him is some of his stats: 92% pass completion rate, very comfortable with either foot in passing the ball out from the back. That sounds like more control than we have when it's Jamal Lascelles who's bringing the ball out. Or is that harsh on poor old Jamal?
No, I don't think it's that harsh at all. I do love Jamal Lascelles myself, but he'll be the first to admit when it comes to playing out from the back, he ain't really there.
Never mind. Here's hoping that he holds up for the whole of the season anyway. Because he's had a torrid time.
Yeah, I think with Malik Chow as well, you mentioned his pass completion rate there as well. One of the things for me is he's in the top 15% for progressive passes of centre-backs across the top 6 leagues as well, which means they're not just passes that are going side to side, which we quite often see with Newcastle. These are forward penetrative passes that are breaking the lines, and if he can find the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali in that midfield more often, then there's a great chance that Newcastle United look even better than what we do in that defence into the midfield three. Now, getting into the final third, maybe we're going to have a few problems with that this season, but at least the build-up is going to be there.
But news following immediately on from the new centre-back who can get the ball into the midfield with, I'm not sure agreement has actually unofficially been announced or not, but very, very quick moving. So fast, it was out after the guys recorded the pod that was listened to this morning. But Newcastle in talks to sign Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa for 40 million.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a very good deal. Certainly a big step up. Personally, I think a big step up from Willock, but if he's the Sean Longstaff replacement, definitely a big step up from Sean Longstaff. What are your views
100%.
on Ramsey? 24 years old, fell from favour a little bit as a first choice at Villa last season, but he still came on with plenty of substitute appearances. Is that a good signing?
Yeah, it's a great signing. I love Jacob Ramsey as a player. I think when he first broke in at Aston Villa, it was in those central midfield positions. Now, when you look at Villa's central midfield, it is stacked. They've Onana last season signed for 50 odd million. He didn't even start games towards the end of the year, and he is an absolutely fantastic midfielder as well. So I think the fact that Villa were trying to push Ramsey out on the left wing just to get him included, even though it was quite clear he isn't the best at being on the wing. You compare him to wingers, he isn't great, but his best position is that central midfield role, and the fact he didn't play that often there for Villa, it shows the strength they have in midfield, and it's a smart it's a smart sale for them as well. 40 million, that's pure profit. But I actually think it's going to be one of those that, as central midfielders go for Newcastle, a couple of years' time, we're going to be talking about Ramsey, Bruno, and Tonali as the best midfield three in the Premier League. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, Joe Linton, you can't keep out Joe Linton." As much as we hate to say it, Joey hasn't really been the same player he was the season before last. Last season there were a few issues on the ball. He isn't particularly great, and when you're looking to improve as a team to get from what we were 2 seasons ago, where we could play on the counter attack quite a lot, we're a little bit dirty, we're bending the rules a little bit. Who doesn't? To a team now who realistically, you go into games against Crystal Palace, etc., you're expected to win. You need more Ramseys in comparisons to Joe Linton. And I think Ramsey's a great example of someone who can do the Joe Linton side of the game, but also create a little bit more for Newcastle as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, certainly when we're facing those defensive blocks that we struggled against at home 5 or 6 times last year, Everton, Bournemouth, Fulham. I don't need to go through all of them because I sat through all of them. I think Ramsey definitely has a little bit of nous. What I also thought, because I have seen him play down the left fairly regularly for Villa, and whilst that might not be his best position, he certainly does an effective job doing that. That could easily be a move that allows Anthony Gordon to play centre forward for as long as we need Anthony Gordon to play centre forward, or allows him to switch to centre forward when Wissa comes off after 65 minutes to have somebody else that can play down the left. So I think it is really quite a smart move. Ramsey's versatility is something that is tailor-made for Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe liked him
100%.
again for a number of seasons. I think we did make an inquiry last summer. I don't know. It seemed to just be Gahey 1,000 times last summer, but there were 1 or 2 other players mentioned. Alanga was mentioned on the last day of the season. I'm sure Jacob Ramsey was mentioned at the start of the transfer window. I think it'll be a great signing. Now, I've got
100%.
a little bit of an update which we can put out because I haven't really seen it anywhere else, and I'm hoping I didn't make it up. We are also expecting to bring in Johan Wissa from Brentford. That is being held up until Brentford can bring in a replacement, and they've earmarked Ouattara at Bournemouth. But of course, they can't bring in Ouattara till Bournemouth bring in a replacement. And I heard that they have reached an agreement with Bayer Leverkusen to bring forward, to bring in the forward. I can't remember all of his name. Adley from Leverkusen.
Yes, Adley. Yes.
Adley. I couldn't remember his first name. Which, if that's true, and it can come through quickly, I don't know. I've heard the deadline for playing against Aston Villa is Friday at 12 o'clock. So it's all going to happen tomorrow. But then when they want to, they can make these things move quickly, can't they? I wonder if Wissa will be sitting on the bench. What do you think?
I think it's one of those. I think it'll come probably a little too close, Villa, which is a shame because I think it's one of those games where Johan Wissa's pace and the fact that he's a very clinical player for a fast forward. You usually find fast forwards aren't exactly the most clinical players, but that pace and their ability to get in behind makes up for it. Kolo Muani is a player that I think of in that example. Johan Wissa's deceptively clinical. And I think that would have been perfect for us against Aston Villa. It'll be even more perfect for us against Liverpool. So if he is missing against Aston Villa, I'm still relatively confident that a front three of Barnes, Gordon, and Elanga can do the job. But our games against Villa tend to be very one-sided, one way. Either they batter us or we batter them. And, I would happily take a draw at Villa Park, given the last few results there. And the fact they're a very good side who ultimately haven't had a great transfer window themselves. This Ramsey deal, as much as we're sitting here and going, oh, that's a great signing, this might actually be an enabler to Aston Villa as well, who, that's 40 million of pure profit.
Yeah, but I mean, at least this time we will not be facing Marcus Rashford nor the
Marco
gifted
Asensio.
Asensio.
Yeah,
Although I did hear that they were looking to get him back on loan. Maybe this will allow them to do that.
potentially.
Too late to play against Newcastle, fingers crossed. So, what about that? Just over 10 minutes, 3 positive transfer stories for Newcastle. And we were talking a couple of days ago about how this transfer window could turn out to be fantastic. I think in the last 48 hours, they've made several strides towards reaching that conclusion. I'm going to pause
100%.
here for Bioniq, and we'll come back and talk about outgoings.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
And we're back for part 2, outgoings. 30 seconds, Michael, on whether Monaco's offer for Kieran Trippier is something that Newcastle will treat seriously. My view is certainly not. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't think Trippier is someone that's for sale at the moment. I think it's one of those where we probably could have got a good fee from him from Bayern Munich last year. I think if Trippier was to go, that would have been the time and the place. But let's be honest, Trippier was having a bit of a difficult time for personal reasons. If he wanted away, it would have happened last year. Monaco is a beautiful place, and I think anyone could be tempted by the scenery more than anything else. But Kieran Trippier leaving Newcastle isn't something I see happening. I could see him staying and maybe even ending up on the coaching staff in a few years' time.
I agree. I do like the. I think anywhere where it's tax-free income is something that would be an appeal, whatever your age is and whatever your job is.
Yeah.
But I can't see them letting Trips go. He's such a central part, I think such a crutch for Eddie Howe to work with as well. Given that he hasn't got anyone above him who's really doing much support, he needs guys like that in the squad. So other departures. I mean, I think if we have another departure, it's going to be Alexander Isak. And that follows on to how I was going to frame this section, which is whether you think if we sign Chow, Ramsey, and Wissa, whether we are going to be bringing anybody else in. They go hand in hand, surely.
I think if we sign those 3 players, obviously Chow's already in the door, Ramsey looks likely, and Wissa, it seems like it's just a matter of when. But if we sign all 3, I think that's the end of it. I believe it takes our spend outgoings to around 150 odd million, which is what we were told we'd have at the start of the window. It was roughly between 150, 170, depending on who you believed. Some were probably looking at euros, some looking at pounds or something like that. I think that's the end of it for us. And to be honest, I'd probably be happy with that. If Alexander Isak goes, it means for me, you've got to spend that money straight away because nobody wants to sell in January. So you either keep that money till next season or you hold on. I know we've brought in some fantastic players in January, but you tend to overspend more often than not because of that. But personally, for me, I think after these transfers, we might see an outgoing in fact, I was going to say maybe a Joe Willock, but I think that leaves us too strapped at the back, even if he will be injured for most of the campaign. So, yeah, I don't think we see any more outgoings or any more incomings from Newcastle after those three. But let's be honest, we didn't think, not many people thought we'd get these signings in such a quick period of time. So
Sure,
who
there's a
knows what we're
fortnight left.
thinking? Yeah, I mean,
I quite liked.
apparently. Sorry, go on.
I quite liked El Canoes with an 18 million release clause or 25 million release clause. I can't
I
remember
think it
what I
was
read.
25, yeah.
25 million release clause. Young lad, come in, develop alongside Miley. If nothing else, that saves Miley from having to come on 2 out of every 3 games, which I think is the situation if we're working with a 5-man midfield squad. I think that's far better if there's 6. I'm assuming Joe Willock never recovers because let's face it, he hasn't for the last 2 seasons.
No.
But I agree that we've spent the money that we were told we had to spend. However, we've got a cheeky Lloyd Kelly 20 mil and a cheeky Sean Longstaff 13 mil up our sleeves. What about 1 or 2 fairly substantial loan fees for our equivalent of Rashford and Asensio? Does that make sense in a Champions League year?
I think it makes sense if you can bring in a solid striker at that level, and then it gives you the option to loan out Will Asula. I like Asula as a player. To be honest, I like him as a person. Obviously, I've never met him, but he seems like a great person to have around. But I think he needs a season where he's the main striker somewhere and he's banging in those goals and getting the confidence up. And more importantly, getting that positional awareness, because it doesn't seem to be there at the moment. If he can go on loan and get that, then there's every reason to do so. And the only way you enable that is probably by bringing in another striker on loan, which maybe sounds counterproductive, taking out a striker to bring in a striker. But I think that's the only way really we do something, because we've got the 2 winger positions sorted. I'd personally be happy with the 5 in midfield, purely because Joe Linton's the only one that's really that injury prone. Obviously, I'm not including Joe Willock in that. Joe Willock did feature in 32 games for us last season, which is baffling, actually. I didn't realise that. He did only play 1,000 minutes, which is probably the reason for that number of games. But yeah, it's one of those where I think we're all right in centre midfield after we bring in Ramsey, and it means Miley's going to get a lot more game time, which will help his development. I think the only position I'd really sit there and say I'd want another player in is maybe another experienced left back, because Matt Targett isn't going to cut the mustard. Lewis Hall, very young, but still a little injury prone. And of course, Dan Burn can play there, but I want Dan Burn as centre-back cover, not left-back cover. And I'm aware of how well he did in the Champions League last time out, playing at left-back, but I don't want to see that again. I'd love an experienced left-back,
2 years
just
older.
in case. Yeah.
Tino and Trips can both cover left back as well, but I mean, you're obviously
True.
you're obviously leaving right back short in that case. Although Emil Kraft is the extra pair of hands or pair of feet, in fact, to step into the right back position. But I just think what you're saying is indicative of where I think we would benefit, given how many games we should play if we're doing any good. It could be 60 games. It's just having extra bodies in the first team squad that can step in and do a job to a certain level. And
100%.
we've got some great kids in the under 21s, but having watched them in pre-season, there's nobody shouting in a way that Lewis Miley was shouting 2 years ago, play me, play me.
Absolutely not.
They maybe could come on and do all right for 20 minutes, half an hour here and there. And I hope some of them do, because that's where they get the confidence to take that step forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about a cheeky little loan offer to take Alexander Mitrovic on loan for the season whilst he's not registered for Al Hilal? That keeps them with a little bit of flexibility as to whether they would give him a registration next year. Or am I just in dreamland, Michael?
I think you might be in dreamland, but it's a dream I want to have as well. I'll happily go to sleep right now enjoying that dream, because I imagine Alexander Mitrovic coming in. I mean, granted, we'd still have Alexander Isak and we'd still have Johan Wissa. Well, we would have Johan Wissa. He's not signed just yet. But Isak, he's probably still going to be in a hissy fit in 2 months' time. I imagine that'll be when he starts to come out of it. Wissa knows the Premier League very well. Mitrovic, could you imagine that depth of Isak, Wissa and Mitrovic? Even if Isak wasn't to play the whole season, I'd still be confident going into a season with Wissa and Mitrovic, which, I'll be honest, 2-3 years ago, it would have sounded like the daftest thing I've ever said. But yeah, that'd be a dream.
I think Mitrovic is a much better striker now than he was when he was that young hothead
When he was with us the first time.
that Rafa Benitez seemed to fall out with. But
Yeah.
Mitrovic is a Newcastle supporter. His idol is Alan Shearer. He knows the crowd loved him. And he knows, I think, that it was Rafa who eased him out.
Yeah, it just didn't fit Rafa's system, which is fine.
He did that
sometimes.
He did that with great grace. I tell you what, if it had been Mitrovic playing centre forward against Atletico last Saturday, he would have had a first half hat trick. But we should leave it there. I'm going to pause there. Let's just dream. That dream was Michael reads the Zencastr advert.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we have spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. And Zencastr, it came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it is super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Now, the last time you said that, you were editing, and I did my Zorro Z whoosh, 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 for Zencastr, and you edited it out. You just made me sound
I didn't
like
do that deliberately.
You just made it sound like I'd sneezed. So I'm not going to do it again. No, I won't. I might try it when you're least expecting it. Anyway,
I think
on to
I think
three.
Zencastr must have looked at that and gone, that wasn't supposed to be there. That wasn't intentional on my behalf, but it just knew that I wouldn't like it. So it's just, woo!
Fair enough.
Praise be to Zencastr.
Now, I noticed when I got all logged on to be able to set up to record this podcast, Michael, that you have been quite a busy little bee in doing some prep work for a bonus podcast to come out on Saturday morning.
That is correct.
So you've previewed the season for us, which I think is great. But one of the elements that you've done, I can't let you have the whole of this to yourself. You've predicted the Premier League finishing order. Am I right?
That is correct, yes.
So I'm going to have a podcast on Saturday morning that comes out about 10 minutes after yours, where I will do the same. And I think we need to encourage the girls and Kevin to find some time between now and 5 o'clock on Sunday morning where they do the same. And then at least we've got our own little. I know. How long is your pod? Because I think mine will
It's 33 minutes.
But you've
so
produced.
that's why I didn't.
You've previewed the whole season, though, haven't you? You haven't just sat there talking about what number anyone's finishing. Right.
Yeah, so I've gone through and I've basically gave. Basically, I wrote a similar article for the company I work for. So I went, you know what, really going to enjoy doing that. So I've put, you know what, this team's going to finish here. This is the reason why. This is who I think the player of the season is going to be. This is who is going to be a fantastic signing for each club. So I've gone through, done that on all of them. I had thought about pitching to the team, and then I realized, hang on, it's going to be an hour-long podcast, and YouTube tends to get a little bit annoyed at us when we do videos over 15 minutes, saying it's not the optimum length. So I'm trying to keep the socials happy as well.
Well, that's fine, Michael. So it's 1 to 20. It's player of the season. It's best signing for each of the 20 teams.
That's what I've done, yeah.
I can do that. I can do that in 10 minutes. By not thinking about my answers. No, I'll think about my answers, but I'll just record it so we can put it down and have a comparison. Now,
absolutely.
Are you prepared to share your top form?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, this is probably the area where I was most confident. And
that's why I asked you that question, Michael.
I think the top four is going to be almost identical to this season. You have Liverpool in first, Arsenal in second, Man City in third, and Chelsea in fourth. But the big difference is that I think there's going to be a quite substantial gap between those four and the rest of the European pack.
Interesting. I don't want you to go through everything, obviously, because we want to be listening on Saturday to get the full
Well, you can
picture.
imagine who I've put last.
Yeah,
Burnley.
that's not a
No,
prediction. That's just a wish list.
that's a
Um,
spoiler.
where did you put Newcastle?
So, a little bit of a spoiler, but I put us in sixth position.
Right.
I've looked at it and I've gone, I think we're going to struggle a little bit with Alexander Isak being out. But I think it's one of those where I think it's probably at the right time of the season where you're playing Aston Villa away, Liverpool at home. We picked up 1 point in those two games last season. We lose them both. We've only lost out on 1 point. And I think you lose a striker like Isak, you do lose probably about 10, 15 points a season. You bring Wissa in, that probably gets you a decent chunk of those back. But I don't think we'll do as well as what we did last season purely because of Champions League as well. So yeah, I have got a team I hated putting above us in fifth, but people are going to have to watch or listen to find out which team that was.
Yeah, I'm going to wait at least 2.5 minutes before I find out who it is because I've got to talk to you up to the end of the pod. Can I just say, I mean, I'm happy to share, but my top four will be completely different to your top four.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I think you'll see Manchester City regaining the Premier League,
Ooh.
Liverpool second, Arsenal third,
Okay.
and Newcastle will finish fourth.
Oh, you think we'll improve on last season?
I think we've got 5 or 6 improvements to the squad, and we've got an Alexander Isak who, let's face it, was lethal for the middle part of the season, but
Yeah,
for the first quarter and the last quarter of the season, he was off it.
it was poor. Yeah,
So Wissa will be giving it all for 38 games, and if we're putting the ammunition through and the pace up there, I don't think we'll miss Isak. I know he's not the best striker in the world. Whoever we get is not Isak, but
yeah.
do you remember in those last 11 games how many gilt-edged chances Isak missed?
Yeah, he wasn't great at all towards the end of the season. I think if you look at it and think we have the Callum Wilson of 2 years ago, well, 3 years ago, should I say, where they were both extravagantly talented and brilliant. I think it's one of those where you could argue Wilson comes in and Isak was getting dropped, but yeah, that middle part of the season, he was unplayable. But as you say, the end, it wasn't impressive at all. And I think that form is the only reason the rumour that he wanted away at the end of last season has any credibility whatsoever because his performance has dropped. I think, let's be honest, he said he wanted to stay here. I don't think he comes out and says, by the way, I'm staying if he wanted to leave
Yeah,
all the way back then. But as you say, his performances give it that credibility because he was very poor.
he wasn't really good, and he cried off against Arsenal. I
Mm-hmm.
think, didn't he? And was he? He didn't play against Everton, did he? Or did he? And played on one leg. I can't remember. He
He
was
did,
so
but he wasn't very
he
good.
was so anonymous against Everton that he might as well have not have done. So yeah, so I think that we've got a much stronger team, and yet the essence of the team remains 3 or 4 years deep. The Chelsea team, Chelsea have got the same problems as they had last year, and they did pull it together last year very well. But there's so many new players in that team; they're going to have to get used to how they play with each other. Um, they won the Club World Cup champions But that team's already been disbanded and replaced with a whole load of different players.
I
I'm
think the team
exaggerating a
that
little bit.
I was going to say, I think the team that starts that first game of the season will be almost identical. And I think when you're switching out Nicholas Jackson, who we've looked at and said we don't want him as a replacement for Isak, but he probably would get us 15 goals a season. I've got a feeling you replace him with João Pedro, and then you've got Liam Delap as backup. I know Chelsea are playing in the Champions League this year, not the Europa Conference League, but for me, I think they're going to be so much of a better side. But I think what will stop them from being in that title race is that Club World Cup, where they've gone all the way through to the final, not had a massive pre-season because of that. But I think whenever you see teams or players play in the summer consistently, by the end of the season, they're not the player they once were. I mean, just look at Phil Foden, for example, when he played in the last tournament for England. He still hasn't recovered from that. Yeah.
Cole Palmer in the second half of last
in the season. Yeah.
The Achilles heel for Chelsea, I think, though, this will be an Achilles heel, whoever they bring in, is that they're still going to be playing Robert Sanchez in goal.
Unless...
Calamity Sanchez. Or unless they get Donnarumma. No, City
yes, I was just about to say that. Well, apparently City haven't even contacted PSG about Donnarumma. And Donnarumma was saying yesterday on his socials that he was guaranteed to be off. So it seems like there's an agreement already in place with someone. If that agreement is with... they bought someone to replace, haven't they? Yeah. If that agreement is with Chelsea or Manchester United, I'm a little bit concerned about how strong those two teams could be, because you replace Robert Sanchez or Andre Onana with Gianluigi Donnarumma, and all of a sudden you've gone from a laughing stock to the strongest beef or chicken stock in the market, and all of a sudden the food's tasting pretty good.
Except in the midfield for Manchester United. Come on, if they get Baleba
yes, the midfield's terrible. But
if they get Baleba as well, I will start worrying about Manchester United. But to be honest, what's Cunha going to do? He's not going to go and win the ball himself. He's not going to get
he'll stand around. But
anyway, we're previewing the season, which is not this podcast. So we just were previewing the previews that are coming. Thank you very much indeed, Michael. Yeah, well, maybe we should have run into another half an hour preview, but I'm sure we'll all have chats about that as the season gets underway.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Michael. That was much more fun than sitting waffling on to myself on a Wednesday, which is what I've had to do the last few weeks.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're back at it next week while I'm away. But I will try and be around on Wednesdays a lot more for you.
Good stuff. Thanks very much for listening, folks. That was me, Iain Mackay, hosting Michael Grahamslaw as part of the Daily Newcastle podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with another one. See you then.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.